the quiet, unassuming town of Redwood Falls, nestled among rolling hills and serene landscapes, there's a story that locals only tell in whispers. It's not about a legendary hero or a forgotten treasure, it's about a house. A house that's been for sale for 30 years, but has never, ever stayed sold. This is the story of the Redwood Falls Enigma, a place that welcomes everyone but keeps no one. From the outside, it looks like any other charming turn-of-the-century home. It has a welcoming front porch, large bay windows, and a beautifully aged oak tree in the front yard. The real estate listings have always been glowing, describing it as a historic gem with unmatched character. And they weren't wrong. The house is beautiful. It's been bought and sold at least a dozen times over the last 3 decades. Families, couples, ambitious renovators, they've all been drawn in by its allure, convinced they would be the ones to finally make it a home. But they never are. The first family to buy the house back in the early 90s was the Hendersons. They were a young couple with 2 small children, full of hope and excitement. They moved in during the spring, and for a few weeks, everything seemed perfect. Neighbors saw the kids playing in the yard, heard laughter echoing from the open windows. Then, just as summer began, the for sale sign reappeared. The Hendersons were gone. They packed up in the middle of the night, leaving behind furniture and half-unpacked boxes. When asked, the real estate agent simply said they had a sudden family emergency and had to relocate. No one thought much of it at the time. A few months later, a retired professor, a man named Arthur Gable, bought the property. He was a quiet, solitary man who was looking for a peaceful place to write his memoirs. He loved the house's history and its quiet dignity. He'd spend his days in the study, surrounded by books, and his evenings on the porch, watching the sunset. He told a neighbor once that the house had a peculiar energy, but he said it with a smile, as if it were a charming quirk. Less than a year later, Professor Gable moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. He sold the house at a significant loss and refused to ever speak about his time there. All he would say was, "Some places aren't meant for us." And so began the cycle. The pattern was always eerily similar. A new owner moves in, full of optimism. For a short time, things seem normal. Then, an inexplicable shift occurs. The initial joy and excitement curdle into a quiet, pervasive unease. It's never anything you can put your finger on. No ghostly apparitions, no violent events. It's something far more subtle, and perhaps far more terrifying. One couple, the Martins, who lasted about 6 months, kept a detailed journal. In the beginning, their entries were filled with happiness. They wrote about painting the living room, planting a garden, and the beautiful morning light that streamed through the kitchen window. But then the tone of the journal began to change. They started mentioning small, unsettling things. The feeling of being watched when no one was there. Doors that they were certain they had closed would be found wide open. Whispers that seemed to come from the walls themselves, always too faint to make out the words. They wrote about a strange coldness that would seep into rooms, even on the hottest summer days. A cold that felt, as they described it, unnatural. It wasn't just a draft. It was a profound, bone-chilling cold that seemed to emanate from the very structure of the house. They checked for drafts, had the insulation inspected, but nothing could explain it. The unease grew into a constant, low-level anxiety. They stopped inviting friends over. They started arguing over trivial things. Their journal entries became shorter, more frantic. The final entries simply read, "We can't stay here. The house doesn't want us." The next day, they were gone. Over the years, local kids and paranormal investigators have been drawn to the house during its vacant periods. They've brought EMF meters, thermal cameras, and audio recorders, hoping to capture concrete evidence of whatever resides within its walls. But the results are always the same. Nothing. The equipment shows no anomalies. The audio recordings capture only silence. The house guards its secrets well. It seems the phenomenon, whatever it is, only manifests for those who try to live there, to make it their own. It's as if the house itself is a living entity, one that is deeply, fundamentally selective about who it allows to stay. An old town historian, a woman who has lived in Redwood Falls her entire life, offered a theory. She believes the house was built on land that holds a powerful, lingering memory. She spoke of the original family who built the home in the late 1800s. They were a family that experienced a profound and sudden tragedy, losing their only child to a sudden illness. The parents, heartbroken, sold the house and left town, never to return. The historian believes their immense grief never left the property. It's not a ghost in the traditional sense, but an overwhelming emotional echo, a sadness so deep that it has become part of the very fabric of the house. This echo, she explained, doesn't lash out. It doesn't want to harm anyone, it simply exists. And when new people move in, with all their hopes and dreams and vibrant energy, their happiness is slowly and systematically eroded by this crushing, invisible weight of sorrow. The house doesn't push people out with fear. It drains them of joy. It creates an environment where happiness cannot thrive, where optimism withers, and where the silence becomes deafening. People don't flee in terror. They leave in despair, their spirits quietly broken, often without even understanding why. Think about it, what's scarier? A ghost that throws things across the room, or a silence that hollows you out from the inside? A house that screams, or a house that makes you forget how to laugh? The people who have tried to live there don't come away with a scary story to tell their friends. They come away with a quiet, personal sadness, a feeling of failure they can't quite explain. They tried to fill a home with life, but the home was already full of something else. The Redwood Falls house stands as a monument to this idea. It's a beautiful trap, a promise of a perfect home that can never be fulfilled. It draws you in with its charm and then slowly, methodically, reminds you that you don't belong. The real estate agents in town are now brutally honest with potential buyers. They share the stories. They talk about the 30-year history of failed attempts. Yet, every few years, someone new comes along. Someone who doesn't believe in such things. Someone who sees a beautiful house at an unbelievable price and thinks, I'll be the one to break the curse. But the house is still there, vacant more often than not, waiting patiently. The oak tree in the front yard has grown taller, its branches reaching out like welcoming arms. The bay windows still reflect the changing seasons. And the for sale sign, a permanent fixture on the lawn, stands as a quiet testament to the 30-year mystery of the house that never stayed sold. It remains a beautiful, heartbreaking enigma in the heart of Redwood Falls, a place where no one can ever truly come home. What do you think is really going on in that house? Is it a lingering sorrow, a territorial spirit, or something else entirely? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Thanks for joining me on this journey into the unexplained. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more mysteries from around the world. Until next time, stay curious. Every family was warned. None listened. The house didn't feel haunted. It felt alive. Mrs. Miller loved the smell of fresh paint. It was the scent of a new beginning, of a clean slate. With each rhythmic roll of the brush, the old faded beige wall disappeared under a coat of crisp, hopeful white. She hummed a little tune, a song from a long-forgotten movie, as the morning sun streamed through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. This room, once a repository of clutter and memories best left behind, was being reborn. It was her sanctuary, her canvas. The stark white was perfect, a blank page waiting for her to write the next chapter of her life. She stepped back, admiring her work. The wall was flawless, a smooth, uninterrupted expanse of purity. It was done. It was hers. But then something happened. As she turned to wash her brush, a faint sound, like fingernails dragging across canvas, broke the morning's peace. She froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Slowly she turned back to the wall. Her breath hitched in her throat. There, marring the perfect white surface, were 3 long, jagged scratch marks. They were deep, gouged into the fresh paint and the plaster beneath, revealing the dark, aged wood of the house's frame. It was impossible. She was the only one in the house. The windows were closed, the doors locked. She hadn't even finished cleaning her tools. Her mind raced, desperately seeking a rational explanation. A stray branch from the tree outside? No, the window was shut tight. A mouse? Could a mouse do that? The marks were too deliberate, too forceful. They looked almost like letters, a desperate, clawed script she couldn't decipher. A chill, entirely separate from the morning air, snaked up her spine. She took a tentative step closer, her hand hovering over the raw, angry lines. The paint around the edges was still wet, but the grooves themselves were strangely dry, filled with a fine, dark dust. It was as if they hadn't just appeared, but had been there all along, waiting beneath the surface she had so carefully constructed. A low bass hit, a sudden deep thrum that seemed to vibrate not through the floorboards, but through her very bones, made her jump back with a startled cry. The sound was gone as quickly as it came, leaving behind a silence more profound and terrifying than the noise itself. The room, once bright and promising, now felt oppressive, the shadows in the corners deepening, stretching like grasping fingers. Her eyes darted around, searching for the source of the sound, the source of the violation, and then a voice. It wasn't loud, but it filled the space entirely, a dry, raspy whisper that scraped against her ears. It seemed to come from the wall itself, from the very scratches that now felt like a gaping wound. "This is not your story." Mrs. Miller stood paralyzed, a statue carved from fear. The words echoed in the cavern of her skull. Not her story? What did that mean? This was her house, her room, her life she was trying to rebuild. She had bought the paint, held the brush, felt the strain in her shoulders. Whose story could it possibly be? The voice didn't speak again, but its presence lingered, a cold spot in the warm morning air. She looked at the scratches again, and for the first time, she saw it. They weren't just random marks. They were a message, an accusation, a warning. The days that followed were a blur of paranoia. She tried to paint over the scratches, but no matter how many coats she applied, they would always reappear by morning, sometimes deeper, sometimes accompanied by new ones. She became a prisoner in her own home, constantly listening, constantly watching. The house itself seemed to turn against her. Floorboards creaked under unseen weight. Doors she had shut and locked would be found ajar. Whispers would slither from empty rooms, always repeating the same chilling phrase. "This is not your story." She started talking to herself, or perhaps to the presence. Whose story is it then? She would shout into the empty hallways, her voice cracking with desperation. "Tell me." Sometimes, she thought she heard a reply, a sigh of wind through the eaves, the rustle of old paper. She began to neglect herself. The desire to create a clean new space was replaced by a frantic obsession with the past. She stopped painting. Instead, she started tearing. She ripped up floorboards, pulled down drywall, searching for the source of the voice, for the origin of the story that refused to let her write her own. Her hands, once steady with a paintbrush, were now raw and splintered from prying at the bones of the house. Under the floorboards in the very room she had tried to paint, she found a small, rotted wooden box. Her heart pounded a frantic rhythm as her trembling fingers fumbled with the rusted latch. It creaked open, releasing the musty smell of forgotten time. Inside, nestled on a bed of yellowed fabric, was a diary. Its leather cover was cracked and brittle, its pages filled with a delicate, spidery handwriting. As she opened it, she knew. She knew this was the story. The diary belonged to a woman named Eleanor Vance, who had lived and died in this house a century ago. She was a writer, a creator of tales, but her own life had been one of quiet tragedy. Her husband had dismissed her passion. Her family had called her fanciful. And her stories, the very essence of her soul, were locked away, unpublished, unread. Eleanor had written about feeling trapped, about being a ghost in her own life, her voice silenced, her narrative stolen. The final entry was dated the day of her death. It read, "He has boarded up my study. He says it is for my own good. But this room, these walls, they know my truth. My story will not be erased. It will wait." Mrs. Miller dropped the diary. The room she had been painting, it had been Eleanor's study. The scratches on the wall, they weren't just marks. They were an attempt to break through, to speak, to reclaim a voice that had been silenced. The whisper wasn't a threat, it was a plea. "This is not your story." It meant, "This is my story. Don't erase me." Mrs. Miller looked at the wall, at the scarred plaster and exposed lath. She was not a haunted woman, she was a witness. She had been trying to paint over a life, to silence a story that was screaming to be told. A strange sense of calm settled over her. The fear was gone, replaced by a profound and heavy empathy. She picked up the diary again, her fingers tracing the elegant script. She would not paint the wall. She would not cover up the past. Instead, she would give Eleanor her voice back. She spent the next few weeks not painting, but reading. She read every word Eleanor had written, absorbing the joy, the frustration, the heartbreak poured onto the pages. She transcribed the stories, typed them out, and found the names of small literary journals and independent publishers. She sent them out, one by one, with a cover letter explaining the origin of the manuscripts. She told Eleanor's story. Months passed. The house grew quiet. The scratches on the wall remained, but they no longer felt menacing. They were a memorial, a testament. The whispers ceased. One afternoon, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. It was from a small press in Vermont. They wanted to publish Eleanor Vance's collection of short stories. Mrs. Miller held the letter, tears streaming down her face. She walked back into the study and stood before the scarred wall. She read the acceptance letter aloud, her voice clear and strong in the silent room. "They're going to tell your story, Eleanor," she whispered. "Everyone will hear you now." And for the first time since she moved in, Mrs. Miller felt truly at home. The house was no longer a place of haunting, but a place of collaboration, a bridge across time between two women who understood the power of a story. The white paint still sat in its can in the corner, but she knew she would never use it. Some walls aren't meant to be blank pages. Some are meant to tell the stories that have been waiting in the dark. My parents said the old house had character. I think they meant it had secrets. I was only 7 and my new room felt huge and empty. One afternoon, while playing, I found a tiny crack in the wall behind my bed, thin as a spider's thread. Out of boredom, I leaned in close and whispered, "Hello?" I didn't expect an answer. I giggled, feeling silly, and pressed my ear against the cool plaster. And then, I heard it. A faint, dry whisper, like leaves skittering across pavement. "Hello." My breath caught in my throat. I pulled back, my heart thumping. It had to be my imagination. Maybe it was the pipes or the wind. The next day, I tried again. "Who are you?" I whispered to the crack. The reply came faster this time, clearer. "I'm your friend." A cold feeling trickled down my spine. This wasn't a game anymore. The voice was soft, ancient, and it was coming from inside my wall. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard it again, even without asking, a soft, scraping sound. And a whisper, "I see you." Someone in the house was listening. And I don't think they were my friend at all. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe for more. The secret door creaks open, revealing a room lost to time. Every inch of the walls is covered in old, faded photographs. As my eyes adjust, a chilling realization dawns. They are all the same families, striking the same poses, generation after generation. Then I see the last photo, the only one in color. It's the Millers. And it was taken today. Front door shaking, won't open. Dark hallway. Whisper, "You may leave." If you leave someone behind, silence. Breathing. The morning sun casts a warm, inviting glow on the freshly painted walls. A brand new "for sale" sign stands proudly on the manicured lawn, promising a new beginning. The real estate agent's voice is a cheerful buzz in the background, highlighting the perfect condition and the coveted one extra bedroom. Every corner of the house speaks of a happy home, a place for laughter and dreams. But as I ascend the stairs, a chill creeps into the air. The upstairs window, once a beacon of sunlight, now holds a different story. A small, pale face, a child with eyes that hold the sorrow of a forgotten tale, watches me. The house is perfect, yes, but we are not alone.